All right. Hey, everybody. This is Laura Lyons. In some circles, I'm known as the lovely Laura from Live from the Armory Wrestling Radio Show. But I am here today with my good friend, True God, and we are going to talk today. Have a little conversation about some things. He's got some stuff in the coming down the pipeline that we're going to get into today. So, True, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing as good as I can. Things are things are a lot different. Like I think we met
Now,
8 years ago, right? Like eight
we
years ago.
We actually we met in 2013. So yeah, 8
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
wow, that's uh that's kind of mind-blowing
It
considering
is
everything that's happened, and we haven't seen one another in a minute. Like
years,
actually seen one
years.
another. It's been
Yeah,
years. But through the magic of the internet and everything, we've stayed in contact, and through Twitter with our little back and forward sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, namely over professional wrestling, but we'll get into professional wrestling here in just a little bit. But let's talk about this album you've got that's getting ready to drop. I know that the single has already streamed, right?
Yeah,
So,
so I had this tendency over the last couple years to just not know when to like stop. So musically, I've put out. So I just like, especially when I think it was like basically the pandemic that kind of changed everything for me. So,
absolutely.
um, yeah, I was in the house all the time. So it's either I'm in the house by myself, I'm in either house with my daughter, and if I'm in the house by myself, I didn't have anything to do and I couldn't go to the actual studio. So I just started recording myself. And when you're in the house by yourself, you know, for all day long with nothing to do, you just start recording, 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 recording. And I was like, all right, I was like, man, I could watch some TV or maybe play some video games or something. And even with that, I was like, oh man, I got this idea. I got this idea. I want to create this. I want to create that. And so at this point, I'm kind of like this next out. So it's funny. I just dropped a accompanying album, like album that accompanies this next one. So this is like a lost tapes, a leftovers, like
Oh, okay.
yeah. So like the songs that didn't make the final cut, I put them out before the album, and it's called The Leftovers. And it came
Uh,
out actually yesterday. It came out yesterday. So actually no, wait, today it came out today. I'm thinking of it as it's a different day because it came out last night at midnight, but it came out
okay.
today.
Okay.
So so that's out. But yeah, I have a couple singles that are coming out. I have one single that's out already on YouTube, and it'll hit Spotify and Apple Music and all that on Tuesday. So I have that one. So and I got it's so many. I have so much. It's kind of hard to tie them all together when you're promoting because they all kind of
Run
tie
together.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I did it was I have Soul Revival 5, which when I first met you, I was on Soul Revival 2.
Oh
So
wow.
it's like yeah. Like literally, I don't think people realize the first time when I put out Soul Revival 2, that was the first time I come down to North Carolina. And literally the same week they had like a PWX show and I put it out. So I was there and I was kind of also promoting my stuff at the same time. And my life had completely changed at that time too. So it kind of feels like every time my life changes a little bit, I put out a Soul Revival album. And and it's been 2011, which was right around the time my ex got pregnant with our daughter, and it Soul Revival 1 came out, and I predicted it before I knew she was pregnant. I even predicted we would have a daughter. We would like I knew that was coming. So it looks like almost like I kind of knew what was happening. And then when I
Right.
started working on Soul Revival 2, I kind of already knew what was happening with my ex and I at the time. Our daughter was already born, and I kind of knew things were changing. So I put that out then. And then Soul Rival 3, my mom had got sick and like I'd lost like three or four friends like all in the same year, like all in that same year. And I put out Soul Rival 3. And then I was ready to like retire from making music because I had been doing it for years and years and
Right.
years. In 2019, I was dating this girl in 2019, and like right around the time we were dating, I was like, man, I'm gonna start working on music, and then we like broke up right in the middle of me recording,
Uh,
and then the mother of my child and I, we've had our differences over the years, and we finally kind of, we were kind of working towards, sitting down as adults and kind of talking out the issues we've had, because
right.
you don't really, when you're co-parenting and when you're doing these things, you don't really have a chance to sit down and say, hey, this is why this is why that. And, a lot of times you don't want to talk about it anyway. You don't want to bring it up because you don't want to ruffle that person's feathers. You don't want to
Right.
cause issues. And so we had, very mature conversation while I was in the process of making, because one of the songs I have wrote is a song called Bygones Be Bygones. And it's about that concept. And literally a week after I recorded that song, she just like, we need to talk. We need, da da da. And I was like, is somebody spying on me? Like, is somebody spying on me in the studio? Like, what's happening? Like, because I don't tell anybody this, and there's
Right.
nobody that has a contact. Like, it just happens that way. And that's when Soul Revival 4 came out. And the last 2 years since I put that out, everything in my life has changed a lot. And because and obviously, even with the pandemic aside, there were things going on that was changing for me. And so it felt like I needed to make another soul revival. And when I started the process, I didn't have it written down in my notes as a soul revival album. And then I realized November 3rd, 2021 would be the 10-year anniversary of the first one. So
Oh my.
I was like, wow, I've been doing this for a decade. I was like, let me get the hell out. I'm tired. Like, I'm done. And it's one thing people don't know is I was going to retire from making albums, not making music, but albums, like solo
Right.
albums, which because it's like people don't know. I don't think people know the work that goes into making solo albums and projects. Like I think when you're in a group, it's different, right? Because you can bounce ideas off of people, you
Right.
know. And I have a group of guys that my crew that I work with, but the crux of what I do is still all true. And so it's kind of like I put a lot of time and effort, a lot of energy into my music, and it's just like, man, look, let me just go live my life, make music free flowing with my boys and my crew, and let me just go do that. Let me just go be dad and work on these scripts, and I have a book that's coming out next year that I finished, and
My. You are a
yeah,
busy man.
I've always tried to stay busy. I can't sit still, and I got that work ethic. I got that work ethic in me. It's been in me for years, and I get that from one person. That's my mom. So, that's just how I am. And I wanted to retire July 12th, 2020. Pandemic was going on,
Right.
and I was like, man, life is for me, and I guess it's gonna segue into something else, but life was looking up for me right before the pandemic. And like my mom, she had a really bad 2019. And but in the second half of 2019, I was her physical therapist. So I helped her. They told me she might not be able to walk again. I was her physical therapist. I helped her walk again. I did all of that. And then I started, like going to like just going places like when I wasn't, there with mom, and like I mean she had nurses with her and stuff
Right.
to take care
Right.
of her. But it's like, when I wasn't with mom, and I was with her like 4 or 5 days a week at that time. So, wasn't with mom, I would be like at a hockey game, at a basketball game, at taking a trip here, taking a trip there. And, I remember I hadn't done that because I was so kind of caught up in like working on stuff and kind of just being there for my mom. She would tell
Right.
me she would
Caregiver.
say, yeah, she would say, baby, I need you to go live your life too. And I kind of was like, okay. She said, and that's one thing she said to me. She said, get back to doing what you love. And I was thinking, man, I love making music. I've been doing that. She said, no, get back to doing what you love. And I fell out of love with a lot of things, in terms of writing, in terms of wrestling. I had fell out of love with a lot of things, and it was kind of like that was kind of like get back to having fun. I wasn't having fun. Like there's a lot of anger a lot of stuff that was going on. I think everybody who's ever followed me on Twitter knows I say crazy stuff. And
Yes, you do.
but but I tell people all the time, like, I'm not that much different in person. I still say crazy stuff. It's just
Very true.
you but I can sit and have regular conversations with people where on Twitter you only get so many characters to say stuff.
Yep.
And so a lot of times I'm just like like we could be at a show. Like if I say something crazy about wrestling, you know, I would say it in person. It's just that I have an actual audience next to me that's gonna
Right.
hear it and probably laughs or says something back to me. So it's just but I had lost that for a while. It kind of lost that. It was just a lot going on. The problems, of course, with the mother of my child, which my daughter was squarely in the middle of that, and that's tough. For anybody that's watching these issues go on, and your child's kind of like a piece of the issues that's going on. Like not my child herself, but and so that was tough. And I don't think people really understood how tough that is for me. While I lost like three or four of my friends that my adult like that I met in my adult life that like passed away, and my mom's sick, and I know that I know that eventually, there's no coming back from this. And so it's like when you add all those things in one, like
That's
it's
a lot.
very tough. And I don't think people understood that. And I think people kind of just like, oh, whatever, he's this or he's that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I am that. But like, I'm it's a reason why and in my background where I come from, I don't think people and that's one thing I used to have an issue with in wrestling too. And I spoke about this is that my background is so much different from everybody that I've met in wrestling in terms of where I come from and what I've been through that I used to find it hard to I used to be quiet. I used to be quiet at a lot of the shows and kind of stay to
Yeah, you
myself.
were. You were, yeah.
And like I was cool with people, but it was just like I didn't feel I was like, man, like you talking about a dude that's lived in the heart of Baltimore for his entire life. And you putting him you
Yeah.
know in these situations, and I couldn't believe. I'm like, man, I'm here, and they got me doing commentary on some matches, and you know what I mean? Like we going out to eat with AJ Styles, and we're talking about Fresh Prince of Bel Air at a Chili's, and it's like a year ago, I was sitting in the kitchen feeding my daughter a bottle, like,
Right.
and
It's surreal.
and so it didn't really dawn on me at the time. I don't think I appreciated the moments like I should have at the time because I was just like we're not supposed to make it out. That's how that's how our mentalities are when we're younger. And my mom was always like, I know where we live at, which we're coming up, and so I know we live at ain't great. She's like, we can get out of here eventually. We're gonna make it out of here. And we did, we did. I was 16, 17. I got away from a lot of the stuff that I was surrounded by.
Right.
And some of it still lingers, like it's
Well, of course it
different,
does. Right.
still lingers. And but when I got to wrestling, I think what was different for me was nobody there really felt like I feel like I didn't understand anybody. Like, and that was because my only experience with dealing with people that weren't from where I was kind of from was at work, doing like work.
Mhm.
So I was so used to having work relationships with people that I was just like, okay, cool, I'll be nice, keep it cordial, I'm gonna stay out
Right.
of my way. And and then everybody goes out and everybody's at the bars, everybody's drinking, everybody's like, yeah, they're like, hey, we're going to Applebee's, we're going to TGI Fridays after the show. What are we gonna do? And I'm like, I've never had that outside of potlucks at a regular job. I've never had we're gonna sit down and eat with your coworkers. So it was different. And I was just kind of like, man, I'm like, I'm cool, and then I started to get cool with people, and I started to become friends with people. Um, and then like I never forget WrestleCade because you were at WrestleCade, that first WrestleCade that I was at. And I
Right.
think either our hotel rooms were like across from each other or like on the same floor.
They were. You were right across from me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know if you saw what I was doing that particular night because it was a lot going on. I shared a room with Craig and we were like both
Yes.
moving. We were both moving in and out with different. That's a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different topic, and then one day I want to get into that because I got to find out what happened that night. I can just
um.
imagine.
So I won't say a whole lot. I won't say a whole lot about that night. I will say that the wrestling business is so much different now now that I've kind of been back around it a little bit,
Than what it used to be.
yeah, like even just 8 years ago, way different. The fans now, honestly, I'll be honest, the fans now are a lot more like fans than they were 8 years ago.
Right.
And because back then, I remember I think it was because I remember, wasn't Caleb, because Caleb was with like Amanda at the time, I think.
Right.
Wasn't Caleb. It was somebody else. It was somebody else that was with us at the bar. No, Tommy Dreamer was down there at the WrestleCade, and a couple other people, and I think Hurricane and Hurricane Helms and a couple other
Right.
people were at the bar, and we're at the in the hotel bar, and it was kind of like it's dudes, man, dudes all together. It's like a kind of a race to see who's going to talk to this person or deal with
First.
that
Yep.
person. Yeah, and I mean, not not to not to be like this. Oh, I ain't gonna say not to be like this. This is me anyway. But it's just like I was like, I'll give y'all a head start because I'm gonna win anyway. If we're doing this, like I'm gonna win anyway. So like that was how I felt. That's how I felt. Like because that's just what I was. Yeah, and so I had a I won't say too much, but I had a plan for that WrestleCade ahead of time, and that plan didn't happen. And since that plan didn't happen, I was like, okay. And I remember I was talking with all the guys that worked for the company that I was there with, and I was like, hey, I mean, we all know. I mean, you and I know what I'm talking about, but I
Oh,
don't want to.
yeah, I understand.
I don't want to put. I don't incriminate anybody. And so it was a lot of people were like, if you don't, I will. If you don't, I will. And I was like, I really don't want to. Like, I didn't really want to. And I don't know, guys being guys, especially then. Then
Right.
it was different. Like guys were like, hey man, like she likes you. I know she likes me, and I'll never forget this. And I will say his name, Chris Hero. Pulled me to the side. He's like, True, this particular girl, don't do it. That particular girl, you should go after. I will never say which girl he told me to go after. It's probably obvious, but it's probably obvious. But I told him, I said, no, I won't go after either one. And he was like, why not? And I was like, well, one, that's probably more of a friend. Two, that other girl's probably a little crazy because they were
Oh,
both like fans. They were both fans,
right.
but one of which was more of a regular fan, and
Right.
one was a newer fan. And with newer fans, like I said, I had no experience with like, hey, the fans want to come hang out after the show, and uh, there's been a lot of different stories told, but I've never had to lie. I've never had to lie about anything in my entire life. So, I mean, outside of like when I was in a relationship or stuff, but, but
That's another story. Yes.
yeah, but no, but when there was someone there who was there, and I realized that their interests were not just solely as a fan. And I think they were trying to work their way somehow into the business. And
It happens.
yeah, and so for me, I happen to be the right hand man of the owner of, I guess, the biggest company, I guess, at that time
Right in the
in the state.
southeast. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think that's what they were trying to do. But little did they know, I'm the worst person to try to do that with, because you give me whatever you trying to give me in exchange for me kind of trying to put you on. I am not going to say anything to the. It's not going to
I'm
turn
not
out
putting
that way.
you over.
Yeah, like it wasn't, and it was kind of like, and I didn't realize at the time. I just thought it was like okay, she just wants to come hang out and we'll
Right.
drink a little bit, and I'm telling Craig, like I'm texting Craig like, yo, like I need the room for like an hour or two, and he's like, he's like, don't be too loud, and I'm like, no, we're good, and you
Right.
know like stuff like, I mean, like stuff happened, and like that was it, and that was was a ripple effect because people started speculating, because if you see somebody obviously come down and they're like their skirts a little off, or their shirts not
Right.
the way it was, and I was like, I mean, nobody's stupid, like like we're not stupid, but it's like, okay, and then but then it became, oh no, that didn't happen, and because that person didn't get what they, I think, desired out of that situation. And like I said, I had no idea that's what it was because I wasn't used to that, and you
Right.
know
You were just taking it at face value.
yeah, I'm used to it. Yeah, I'm used to it. And the next thing I know, I left North Carolina for a while, and then I got a text and like, yo, such and such is dating such and such. And I was like, really? I'm like, how did that happen? And then it goes into, yeah. And then I found out that that person hurt the person that they ended up dating. And I was cool with the person that they were dating. I think we're all cool with that person. So and that became a whole different thing. And so I had to tell him like, yo, I just want you to know that this happened before. I was just doing that merely because I wanted him to know like I don't think it's as genuine as
Right.
you think it
Your
is.
heads up.
Yeah. And so what happened was, I'll never forget this. I went to an event that this person, coincidentally, this girl happened to be working at. And so was the guy she was dating, but like he looked like real dejected and sad. And I was like, yo, you good? He's like, cool, man. Whatever. I go, as soon as she sees me, hey True, hey, trying to talk to me, messaging me like while I'm there at the show. And I was like,
Oh.
and like I like, I was like, okay. And so I kind of went home like, yo, man, like, nah, bro, like,
What's going on?
like you need to see this, man, like, because I felt like my loyalties lie with the people that I'm there help to set the ring up with.
Absolutely.
The people
Absolutely.
that putting the tables up, not somebody that I just met at a random convention or Applebee's, and you just had to like so. And so, like I said, at the end of the day, I didn't like the fallout from that because I got a lot of backlash when all I did was do what I figured most people would
You
have
would have
would have
done.
done. Like if you got a girl that's not like she's decent, and like my plans fell through for. I mean, like I feel like most people, if you had any situation where you're out of town, technically I was out of town. You're at a
Right?
convention, you're at an event, you had some plans that fell through, and it was just like, oh, this person that you know of is like, hey, let's go chill chill together privately in the room. I'm like, oh, we can chill at the bar. You don't want to chill at the bar. Oh, okay. Da 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 ding ding ding. Okay. And I did that. And I think it caused such a weird reaction from people that like it got to the point where like people start saying stuff, and people were coming to like the events we were at and like saying they were gonna come and shut down the event over that person. And I was like, yo, like, first of all, if y'all show up, I'm smacking the fuck out of anybody that shows up. Like, I just want y'all to understand this. Like
It's
this is
going
like,
down.
yeah, like you like I get it. We're all in wrestling. It's fun. It's like, oh, we're just talking shit. Like, this is different. Like, y'all like I was there through a lot of the stuff where the stress of trying to book Ziggy's and trying to book trying to get out of Tremont Music Hall. I was there for that. So if you're coming to try to mess up a show that I that I have a vested interest in, I'm gonna knock you the fuck out. Like, that was just, I'm gonna
Well,
knock you out.
especially back then when they were booking like weekends, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yep.
It was just a one thing. It was a triple shot, and I can't
Yep.
imagine trying to put all that together, and then you have this drama, this unneeded drama on the side, and yeah, I'd have knocked somebody out too.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize at that time it was very stressful for me because I didn't feel like I belonged in that circle of people. Like I felt like I would like when Kevin Steen was shooting the Kevin Steen show with Swan, and like I got to be there, and I've never actually watched that one, so I might be in the background or something of it, but like being there for that was one of those times where I'm like, everybody's like, yo, True does music too, right? So, and we're like, joking around a little bit, rapping and stuff, and it felt normal, but like otherwise it was always something. It was always something. Like, I had a friend who I was hanging out with all the time, and people speculated about what was going on there. Somebody was like, "Oh, I saw you hang out with such and such at this Chinese place," and I was like, "Yeah, we just hanging out." And then someone who shall not be named, that's actually currently controversial in the world of wrestling, opened her mouth very, very much. And
Oh, who that is?
yeah, that's been her issue her entire career. She
Oh,
opens her mouth just a little too much. and
oh.
and and like I said, it was never my thing to confirm whether or not people's suspicions or what they thought was correct or not. That wasn't my place because it's none of your business anyway.
Right, you
And
just live
so,
your life.
yeah, and so it was like, if it was that, not your business. If it wasn't that, still not your business.
Much business.
Now, as time went on, I've learned that things have been said, and that's whatever. That's fine. Like I said, I'm not there. I wasn't there anymore. So people can say, deny, or do whatever they want. Totally fine with that. Has nothing to do with me because it doesn't matter. Like, not there. I'm not there. But I just didn't like the conversation that was happening. And honestly, nobody really knows this. I left and I never came back. I just never came back. That
Right.
was
I wondered where you went because I missed seeing you at shows.
I just never came back. And I made a decision to one, not go back because I had stuff to take care of here. And my mom also, the early stages of her issues. And I guess, and I was very angry and bitter at my family because my family wasn't there for my mom. Like it was a whole bunch of personal stuff. And I felt like nobody was there for anyone in my entire world except me. Like whether it was my mom, whether it was like my daughter, whether it was this, like it was just me. Like outside of obviously my daughter's mom, it was just me. Like that was it. My
Right.
family wasn't supportive of anything. So it's like I was doing everything myself. And then for me to come down to North Carolina and be real, I was staying in the house of the owner. Like I
Right.
was staying
Right.
in his house. And then there was like a thing there where people were like, oh, what's going on? And that was the owner's fault. I'll say this for opening his mouth and saying that jokingly, I saw his wife naked. Let's put that out there. He said that. And then started this whole thing where everybody's like, oh, true. We know how you are. So did you? I mean, did you? And it's like,
That's so high schoolish. I didn't know any of that went on. This is totally,
this is all that
news.
was going on. All that was going on. And that was the problem for me was this like, you know, if I'm talking with people that I consider friends, and like I said, after 5, 6, 7 months of being around these guys all the time, now I feel like you're my friend, like
Right.
now I feel like you're my friend. Like now I will go out with Manny. I think he was No Way Jose in WWE, but Manny
Yeah.
Fernandez, I think Manny Fernandez, something like that was his name. Go out
Right.
with Manny. We go out to eat and we're talking with him. We go out with Cedric, we're talking with him and Ariel and all these people, and I'm talking with them. And like I felt like okay, we're friends. Like I have a
Right.
vested interest, and so I made it my point to try to blow up Cedric as much as I could because I had a lot of followers at the time and through my music and stuff. And I wanted to be like the bridge of the gap between like
Right. Help get
the
Cedric over.
yeah, because it's like there's only so much I can do in North Carolina. I said, but hey, I'm catching a flight to LA because we got a show to do or like a music show to do. Or,
Right.
there's a lot of fans in the black community that didn't watch anything but WWE. So,
Gotcha.
I I used to be like, hey, if you live in New York, you don't care what's going on in PWX. You
Right.
don't really care. You don't care what's going on. You really don't even care what's going on in Ring of Honor if you live in certain places either. You don't care what's going on in PWG if you live in such and such. You don't
Right.
care what's going on in here. And so I would be like, hey, I got like 10,000 people following me, and none of like maybe 1,000 of those people care about wrestling. Like, okay, so I'm like, hey, Cedric and Caprice Coleman together as a CNC Wrestling Factory. Like, y'all gotta check them out and go to hot spots, get these DVDs, da da
Right.
da. And I had a couple people come down like to see the show because of word of mouth, and like I was really trying my best to use my resources to push. And like when you're doing all that and then like stuff starts happening, I'm like, okay, I'm cool, man. Like I'm good. Like, and like I say, that was a straw that kind of broke the camel's back was that it was too much going on. And I kind of felt like people were kind of getting a little bit too much into their own heads, like the owner called me one day and he started off like he was yelling. And I remember telling him like, yo, start this conversation over.
Well,
And
I
he
don't
started
blame you.
over,
Right.
he
I don't
started
blame
over, but I'm like, we don't talk to each other like that. We talk normally. He called me, hey man, if something was stressing him out, yo, bro, let me talk to you for a second. I got you. Talk to me.
you.
We're friends. You talk. But I realized that people are only your friend for as long as you're needed. And that's the business. And I didn't know that at the time because I didn't come from that. So
It's a hard lesson to learn
yeah,
when
like
you're used to that. When you're taking people at face value, and I learned that too dealing with wrestlers because I didn't. I just take people at face value anyway, so I know exactly how you feel.
yeah, and that was it for me. Like when I was like, man, these people know who I think. And there were ideas that I had too for the company, for characters that nobody like people would listen to and tweak them, and then they wouldn't say anything. So it was like people used to ask me like, "What did you used to do?" And I'm like, I was a consultant. I feel like I was a consultant that gave ideas out there. They act like they didn't hear or really want to listen to, and then they would tweak them in their own way. And that used to bother me too, because I'm not used to not getting credit for stuff that I
Well,
helped to
you
contribute
should.
with.
You
You
know,
know?
you're an artist. You should get
Yeah.
credit for your work.
And so and because I remember nobody also briefly, I'll tell you, the way I got into this was I was on a different podcast. This is before the owner of that current that promotion was even the
Right.
owner. This is before.
Heels, right? Heels
Yeah.
after Raw.
See, that's the thing. Before Heels, I used to be a part of a thing called Wrestling Heads. And Wrestling Heads, I don't want to take all the credit, but like I was a big part of blowing that up because they were like they had reached out to me and they were like, yo man, like we like your music, bro. And and I'd never heard of them before. And so I remember they were like, you want to come on the show? And I kind of was like, you know, if I like I love wrestling, so I always like if I get on the podcast, I'm cutting promos. I'm doing promos, man. Like this is like heel, and I became the heel on that podcast because
Right.
everybody's like hey man, like especially when they were doing like the no hate John Cena thing or you had to
Right.
like and I used to just go in on John Cena and I used to talk about Rock too. When Rock came back, and I was like, I love the Rock, but when Rock was like getting his promo notes on his arm, and I was just going like everything, I would go on anything I could, and it's to the point where like, yo, our listeners are going up, and then it was like True's rant of the week became like a thing on there, and that's when the owner of said wrestling, or now the owner of said wrestling company, used to call into the show, and he was not the owner, he had
No, it
no
was another person was.
nothing. And so he reached out to me and he's like, man, you are like, you got something. We can make it, we can do this, He's like, I'm trying to get some connects in the business and, trying to get, he's like, I go to these shows to this company. He told me the company. I was like, the hell is that company? You know, like I had never, like, I'd
Right.
never
I
heard of
mean,
that company before. I'd never heard of it. Like I heard of PWG, so I was
right.
like, you mean? So I thought this would even. I was like, you mean PWG? He's like, no, no, that. And I'm like, oh, like man, send me like a email with like some like DVDs or it's like send me something so I can watch so I know what you're talking about. And
Right.
then I saw that like, oh, Matt Hardy's been here, Kevin Steen's been here, Adam Cole's like, oh, okay, I see the vision now. Okay, I
Right.
got you. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is dope. And then the heels thing started. When wrestling heels started, like I said, I like I don't like to take all the credit for anything or take credit for anything that I've had partners in, but I really felt like that was my brand to push because I was the
You were
lead
the
interviewer. I
right.
was the heel. Like it started off of that. So I was pushing it and just to sit down and be like, hey, we're gonna be a sponsor for WrestleCade or we're gonna do this and that. Like
Right.
that meant to me like something I'm doing is working. And
Right.
and wrestling, all the crazy outlandish things that people thought I was, oh, this person's crazy. I'm like, you think I'm crazy, but you're still gonna follow what I say. And then people are
You're gonna see what
still,
I'm gonna do next.
yeah. And so like one of my favorite heels of all time was Roddy Piper. I love Piper. Piper was
He
one of
was
my
good.
favorites. And I used to watch stuff he would do, and I'm like, man, he's such an asshole. But like I
But
love it.
you're tuning in.
Yeah, I love it. Flair. I mean, I can't say enough about Flair. Flair is one of those guys that I will watch Flair, and I mean, I know right now he's not in very favorable
No.
right now with people, which I understand. I understand. But like back in those days in the 80s and 90s when I used to see all those like old, DVD, well not DVDs, old VHS tapes, I'd be like, man, the way he talks is just like it's so fluid, it's so crisp, and he just pissing you off, but like he's pissing you off in a way you're laughing about him pissing you off as opposed to being
Right.
mad. And so at that point, I was just like, man, I just got to say whatever's on my mind and like say as much as I can. And I try to embody like some of my favorite comedians too when I do stuff, like especially when I say very outlandish or non or like politically based statements. Like I take a lot of George Carlin and Richard Pryor, and like I'm an artist, so everything I do is always like this is stuff I feel and I believe, but I might say it a little more harshly because I know it'll get your attention. And
Right.
so that was just my whole thing. And I think a lot of times people people don't understand that, you can put who you really are in your art, but it's still art. It's still art. You know what I mean? Like, so that's how I feel like Wrestling Heels grew. And, from there, that's when the other company ended up getting bought. And by that time, Heels was already like, we months and months into, what we're doing. And we got, emails, and I'm getting, like, I had a press email, like a email from people. So I was like, man, I'm like, things are going, yeah, like things are going good. And, I like, once again, it's one of those things, like I said, you rewind a year prior to that. Um, the truth is, I had quit my job because my daughter's first babysitter was terrible. And her mom didn't want to. I said, you can stay home, I'll just work. Like, no, fine. Like,
Right.
like, you had been, like, she had been home. So it was like, and she was like, no. And I understood, postpartum's a thing. And a lot of times you just want to get back to feeling normal.
Right.
And I think she just wanted to go back to work to feel normal. So I said, okay, I know how to make money regardless. So, you know, I'll stay with the child. Yeah. And so, but that was tough, not because of me being a dad, it's because me being so used to being like having everything in my fingertips work wise, it
Right.
like I was so like I'm such a worker, so I was just like baby sleep. What do I do now? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm just home. What do I do? And that's when I kind of was like, all right, I got this laptop, got this internet. Something's got to happen. I got to do something to keep me occupied. And that's literally how Wrestling Heels and all that stuff came about. Was just me kind of like, all right, I got this baby, and I need to
I
do
got
something,
yeah.
you know. And so that started, and that was a fun time in my life. Like I always say, I wish I had a little bit of a do over. Like 2021 True in that era would have thrived a lot more, I think, because I would have
Right.
probably, hindsight is 2020, right? Hindsight is just like, at that time I didn't appreciate everything that was happening around me, because and more so because it was surreal that it was happening. Because it's like, man, I'm just a dude from West Baltimore, like here I am, and like, I'm a part of this and I'm part of that, and it's almost a self-worth thing, to where now it's like,
Right.
I'm supposed to be here.
Absolutely.
You,
Absolutely.
you know,
That comes with age, and it comes with uh it comes with time, and it comes with maturity, because I feel the same way. I'm a little girl from Appalachia, and I have interviewed so many people and have got to meet so many wrestlers I grew up watching, and just watching them now, and sometimes it's almost like an imposter syndrome. It's like,
yeah, right.
am I who I think, am I really who they think I am? But all that comes, and I just want to say, I had no idea that was going on while you were going to PWX, and I was going to PWX. And so I am very sorry that that happened to you, because it's just like high school. I'm like, you people are grown, you're grown, why are you doing this? Why is this an issue? you
Yeah,
know
and like I said, I remember the last time I was there, I knew it was gonna be the last time I was there, and nobody else knew.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else knew,
Right.
because it was like, I remember leaving, and I remember the owner's like, he's like, so we're looking to, like, we got April, because I told him I had to go back. I was like, man, I got to go back to Baltimore. Like, my mom needs me, and like, other stuff going on, and I had two friends that I grew up with that got killed, so I
Oh,
had to go back
God.
for their funerals, which I didn't even. I attended I didn't stay for the actual funeral. So I just couldn't. It's too much all at once. So I was just like, all right, man, I can't. But I remember I went out to eat with someone, a friend of mine, and we're out, and I don't think she knew that was my last time. I didn't even tell her. And you know, the reason why I was my last, because kind of that was also a part of the basis of why, because I was going out with a friend of mine, that we were going out all the time, and people start, like I said, people start talking, and I was not used to that. Like, if I was to be friends, or whether platonic, whether dating somebody, I was never used to people trying to be in my business that much, that it mattered. And I
And it
like,
doesn't,
it doesn't, and that's when I realized, like, when you go out to eat with the boys, and the boys like, oh yeah, such and such was at high spots today. Like, I bet you saw her, true, ha ha ha. It's like, why is that like,
Right. What are you
like
talking about, man?
they're like, what's gonna do with me? And then that becomes, oh, why is he denying? Why you're denying it? And I'm like, it's nothing to say. I'm just, it's none of y'all business. Like, you're like, well, we heard, you were such and such, or you such and such. And I'm like,
Lord,
what does it
Lord.
matter? Like, what does it matter? Like, and like the one thing people don't even like, they didn't realize at the time, it's like, outside of that particular person that I was hanging around a lot, I had another person, and like another girl that I was hanging around with, that was, I was okay with people knew, but it was just like, all right, and so like there was a lot of things happening at that time where it was just like, all right, man, like,
I gotta get
you
out of
know,
this.
because and the worst part was I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody and sit down and be like, hey, the only person I could talk to was the girl that people were assuming that I was like, you know,
Had
and
something
and
to do with.
and the
Yeah.
thing is, and it's hard. It was hard for me to talk to her. I feel it's hard for me to talk to her about it because I don't think you really know. Like, people can say what they want later, but like in the moment, I feel like I can't really say what I want to say because, for one, I didn't want to be like, hey, this is going on, and I was like, man, I don't want people to think this or that. I don't want people to think that. And I could have probably messed that situation up a little bit because I would show up to places and this person would be acting like we talk all day, and I'd be like, I'm like,
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
yeah, like, I'm like, what you doing? And but then after that, that same person was like, no, it was nothing like that. It was nothing like that. And I'm like, if it wasn't like that, then why you play it up like that? If it wasn't, why you play it up like that? like why'd you do that? And then
Game.
tell people. But then I realized why that was, and then I was like, okay. I realized why that was, and I was like, cool. I said that wouldn't have been for me no way, and I understood that. That situation, regardless of what path it would have continued down, if I stayed, wasn't gonna be for me anyway. And I knew that, and I understood that, and I realized it was better off me creating separation from everybody there, because these weren't really my friends. You know what I mean? Like, these weren't really my friends.
And
You
that's a
know?
hard pill to swallow. It's really a hard pill to swallow when you figure out that, I've always said it's always hard to figure out that you were not as important to someone as you thought that you were. And
Yeah.
that's a really hard, and that will make you grow up really, really quick. And you had issues at home that were much bigger than what was
Much
going
bigger.
on in North Carolina.
And
You're a dad and you're a caretaker, and people don't realize how much it takes out of you when you are a caretaker, and until you've been in that role you
yeah.
have no clue. And I applaud you for doing that, because not everybody can be a caretaker. There's just and a care.
I I would never want to do that again. It was the hardest thing because, outside of the fact that it's your parent that you're doing that for, you're still watching them slowly drift away. And that's I've told people I've had to spend time away from my daughter, that I did not want to, that was out of my hands. That's a whole story I'm not going to get into, but
Right.
I had to deal with that. And while I'm dealing with that, I'm watching my mom piece by piece, like, lose pieces of herself. And it's like, but I can't show that it bothers me, because my job is to make sure that she's as happy as
Right.
possible.
You're the
And
rock.
and like, my grandfather is the only person who I will say he was around a lot. And he and I weren't on good terms for years, because young True was a little wild, rambunctious,
That
teenager. So yeah, yeah, I mean, I was doing a whole lot. I was doing a lot of crazy stuff until I met the mother of my child. I was kind of giving my mom so much grief at the time, and um, but I slowed down. I met the mother of my child, and I kind of, as people say, went legit, as they all stuff like that. And and at that point, life was pretty fairly normal. A couple
right.
bumps in the road, but fairly normal. And so, but there was always this family separation, because of people. If people see you as one thing, it's hard for them to ever see you as anything else.
Absolutely.
No matter how much you grow, get older, people
Absolutely.
still see you as that. And so, for me and my grandfather, the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a lot of, like, long, serious talks. And I told him, I said, man, like, I always loved you, man. Like, we family, like I don't
Right.
hate you. I was like, y'all treated me like I was black sheep of the family because I was in the streets. Like my mama was working 14, 15-hour days to help get us out of the neighborhood. I had nothing but time on my hands. Like
Right. So, and
I
that's what
was,
happens.
yeah, like I'm surrounded by this. I'm surrounded by that. And like even growing up, like people would try to like pick up, oh, you light skinned, so I'm future. And then like I had to fight. That's a whole nother, thing that a lot of people don't understand unless you come from like our community. Like your skin color, we're all black, but our skin colors are different. People try to treat you differently off of that. So I would have to fight because if you're lighter, they assume you're weaker, and that's one thing you can never assume about me is that I'm weaker because
Oh,
that's never the
that's
case.
not one. There's one adjective I would never ever describe you as is weak.
And that's just and so I had to go through that coming up too. So there's all these different things going on. And I told my grandfather, I said, man, I said it'd have been very nice to have a lot of support
I'm
through
sure it
all of
would.
those times that I was going, I was telling somebody, I said, if people understood my story, which is why I have a book that I wrote about my life. It's like I saw my first shooting when I was 5. I saw my first murder in front of my face when I was 6. I watched my own grandmother take her last breath in front of me when I was 7. I saw the life leave her body. I'm like, nobody should ever have to go through that.
No,
Go
no.
through that. And so, and it's like, and then and it doesn't stop at age 7. Like my great aunt,
Right.
I saw her 2 hours before she passed away. I was 8 years old. We had a Christmas get together because my grandma passed away the year before, so we all got
Right.
together. She passed away like the month of December used to be cursed for me because everybody was passing away between December 21st and December 28th. Like all of my great aunts, like I went through hell. And and this is a kid, like as a kid who had really no concept of what death and
Right.
the finality of any of this is. And then one day you just stop seeing people that you always saw. And then you get older and then it's like the deaths hit harder now, like and
Right.
the
They
voids of this
do.
thing hit harder. And people don't and people just don't understand. And there are people who, like I said, when I've lost so many people that when I go through losses, people assume now that you're strong, so like you don't need too much support. Just want to say condolences and it's not
It's not true at all. It's
nah,
even worse.
yeah, it's like and you especially like losing my mom was like I kind of knew sooner or later, especially when 2020, like I said, 2019, as I was mentioning, in 2019, she started to get stronger, started to get better. And then I don't know what changed with like February or March, right around the time the pandemic and they start shutting stuff down. I knew the way the situation was working. She was not able, like it would be impossible for me because I had stuff to do, so I couldn't be there all the time. And then they were like, okay, hey, we're gonna take her to rehab because she had a issue. She needs to go to actual rehab where she could be watched 24/7 around the clock. And I was like, okay, and this is like February, so I'm thinking, okay,
Right.
cool.
COVID hadn't hit yet. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm like, okay. I said, I'll be there 4 or 5 days a week, no problem. Like y'all can do the rest of the work. I'll do most of the work. That's how it's always been.
Right.
Cool. And you don't think anything's wrong, and then COVID hits, and it's like, well, we're shutting everything down. Nobody can visit. And I'm like, wait. Not
Yeah.
like,
That can't happen.
and
Yeah.
and so and Maryland's different. Maryland's different. Like, I'm not always in Baltimore anymore. But like Georgia's my second home now. So really my first home. That's yeah. Atlanta's really my first home now. I'm there more than I'm in Baltimore.
Okay.
But yeah, but at that time it was just like, okay, like what do I do? Like what do I do? Like, and so
Right.
I got to talk. I'm calling the nurses every single day, both me and my grandfather, because if I can't get in touch with him, he'll keep calling. If I can't get in touch with him, if I gotta like if baby girl's doing virtual learning, I gotta focus on that. He'll call. Like all that stuff is going on, and while that's going on, I kind of felt like, all right, she's okay, she's stable. There was like a couple months where it's like we don't know how long, and then I'm like and I would like video chat her through Zoom and all that stuff, and
Right.
she would just look like her regular self to me. So I didn't see any of those issues, and I mean I knew the issues she had, but I didn't think they were like like fatal type of thing. But
Right.
but the problem was is that there was something there that was affecting my mother that that wasn't listed in her chart. And that was the thing that bothered me because I was so worried about her catching COVID that you don't think about other stuff like hypertension and cardiovascular issues that have already been there. And the problem is that because she had like several other issues, they were focusing mainly on those. And they'd be like, oh, her blood pressure is just a little high today. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's hypertension. What can happen with hypertension or severe hypertension is you have a heart attack.
Right.
And heart attacks are taking out so many people that you don't expect it. And so unfortunately,
Right.
that's what I lost. That's what I lost my mom to, not the other ailments or issues that had previously happened. And I talked to her literally the day before. Unfortunately, to tie into my retirement, I was going to retire July 12th, 2012, because that was my daughter's 8th birthday. And the good news for me was Maryland was opening back up.
Right.
And you know, at small capacity, but rehab facilities were allowing visitors. You just had to get a negative test, COVID
Right.
test, to come in there. And I was like, and I was with my daughter. I said, hey, as soon as they open up, I'm in
Right.
there. And my daughter's birthday is July 12th. I put out an album that's called Black Diamonds on July 12th. I was totally okay with walking away from music in general, not just solo, in general. And I took my daughter out to the aquarium. You know, she had a fun birthday, picked her cake up. Great. She's, you know, and she's like maybe next, you know, for next birthday, like, you know, grandma and we can all, you know, da da da. And I was like, yeah. That'd be fun. That'd be fun. And 4 o'clock in the morning, that literally was like, and because I remember I got a call from my grandfather at 4 in the morning. And I woke up and I was like,
It's not good. Yeah.
and I didn't answer. And I got up and I just sat there at the end of the bed because I knew that like I couldn't sleep that night anyway because I felt it. Like I was tossing and turning, like something's wrong.
Right.
And I remember sitting at like the end of the bed and like I didn't want like I felt like as long as I didn't hear the news,
It
what
was
I felt,
true.
it wasn't
Right.
real.
Right.
My grandpa, he just kept calling. He kept calling. He kept calling. And I just had to answer it. And I even told him, I said, I already know. He's like, the doctors call you? I said, I already know. And, you know, I pride myself in a strong person, but at that same time, my daughter woke up
Oh.
and I could not could not hold anything at that point. Like I completely lost it. And my daughter was there to, you know, that's the only time she's ever seen me like break down. I actually seen, you know, like she do something really cute and I'll have like a happy tear, you know, just like that's my
Right.
baby, you know, like one of those. But that was the only time she's ever seen me like completely lose it. And, you know, at that point, it was just like I just like, what do I do? You know, what what do I do? And I spent a whole week of my life inside of a funeral home, talking to insurance, and it was the worst week of my life. And I never, I everybody has to eventually, of course, we all lose our parents. That's you know, that's life. But I never ever wish that on anyone because like I didn't know what to do with myself. And I was like, I just retired, you know, because my thought was if I could get her out of rehab, you know, I figured at best she had 2 3 years, maybe, you know. I was like, but hey, we're gonna make those last 2 3 years as good
The
as we
best
can.
ever. Right.
And if COVID just had not existed, like I felt like I could feel a little bit more at peace with it because I would have much rather been there for those last couple of months
Right.
physically. And there's a story that I've told that I was not supposed to see her on Mother's Day, but I found my way into that rehab facility. I was y'all not denying me that. And I got my last Mother's Day picture of her. And that was like that happened for a reason, you know,
Yes,
and
it did.
because I knew anyway. I said, look, I didn't think she was gonna make it to her next birthday because like when I started to see her deteriorate a little bit more, and she was bedridden. I know my mom.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
my
not
mom's.
Yeah.
I'm my mom's child. The moment when they told her she couldn't walk again, in 2019, she was like, "I'm ready. I'm done." And I was like, "What?" She said, "I can't. I can't." I said, you ain't going out like that. Mm-mm." And she was like, "You ain't giving up on me?" I was like, "No, I never give up on you." And I picked her up by myself. Like I was in the gym like 6 days a week. So my mom was like 6'1" and like she and
Right.
she's but I was in the gym and I would pick her up by myself and I said, "We're gonna teach you how to walk again to the point where you can get up on your own. It's mental. It's mental. They're telling you that. Don't listen to them." And even the doctors were surprised, like, "I can't believe with the severity of what was going on, and I can't believe that." And I was like, "Don't ever doubt my mom. Don't ever doubt that." Like I never did. And
Right.
when that was going on, like I just remember thinking, I had the feeling, I'm like, this is probably like the last hurrah for her because it's just her last fuck you to the doctors that told us
Right.
that she couldn't do something. Like I
Right.
know, like if she wants to go, she's gonna go on her own terms. But I knew she wasn't. No one's happy when you're confined to this, or you
No.
start to lose control of yourself, and you can't control when you go to the bathroom, like how you move.
Right.
It's tough, and I knew it, and so it's like it was hard, but at the same time, I understood because I had been watching this slowly happen, and just watching it slowly happen. It's just like, all right, mom, like okay, like you don't want to be here, but she always said, I'm here until I think you don't need me anymore. And like, there's a lot of stuff that happened, and you know, by the time my daughter's eighth birthday, like I said, I had issues with the mother of my child, so I was dealing with a lot of things, and not being able to always see my child when I wanted to, or talk to her when I wanted to, and I would try, but just you know,
Roadblock.
situations are, yeah,
Right.
it's tough. And when the roadblock was completely knocked down, and everything was like, wow, I had a weird feeling that day when I talked to my ex, and we were like, hey, look, I want us to be cordial, maybe even be friends. Like let's work through this. And I felt weird. And I remember telling my grandfather, I said, this is weird. And he's like, why? I said, I know my life. I know my life.
Right.
Nothing happens by coincidence. Nothing happens just to happen. I'm like,
Something big is coming.
yeah, I was like, I know it. I was like, because my like being able to have my daughter 24/7 is the best. It's the best thing. That's what I've been wanting the last few years, is to finally get that. And now having that, the moment I had that back, I was like, I know this is for a reason. Like I know
Right.
it.
The other shoe's got to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the moment that COVID happened, I remember I was sitting in the house and I was like, this is it. Like I have to get used to a life where I can't just get up 4 or 5 days a week and just see my mom.
Right.
Can't. And I had to, and that was an adjustment. And I was like, this is happening in my life at this particular time. I was like, and it's tough, but it's just like, hey, that's life. And life works how it works. I had to do, you know,
It does.
and it wasn't easy. I think that's the problem. That's the problem that I thought it would be not easier in terms of like dealing with the loss, but like the 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 picking myself back up. I thought it'd be a little easier because it was like, man, I've always been able to pick myself back up no matter what it was. And but it's that void of, Google does this thing where you have pictures and memories and it pops up, and oh, a year ago today, look what you were doing, or 2 years ago, and then it pops up and your entire day is like just completely messed up, you know?
I know, I know, I know. I lost my mom in 2007, so I know what you're going through. I don't know the pain that you have exactly, but I understand that loss. And when you lose a parent, especially your mother, you I know it's corny and it's in that Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men song, "The sun never shines the same," and it
Yep,
really doesn't. Nothing is ever the same once your mom is gone. And
yep.
I applaud you for taking care of her like you did. And it is not an easy thing to just pick yourself back up. It's
No.
I she's been gone for, almost 14 years, and I still to this day have issues. Something will hit me and just I'll break down into tears. And grief is a grief is a journey. It's not a destination, and it subsides some days, and some days it's like it just happened yesterday. But you know, my advice to you is don't ever let anyone tell you that you've grieved enough, because only you know that. And don't ever let anyone tell you, you need to get over it.
Oh, no
Because
one.
there's no getting over it. There
Yeah, no,
is.
there's no one around me at all that could ever tell me that, because they know better. Like I feel like,
So you
because
they better.
yeah, they know me, they know better. Like, and I just remember, like my grandfather has a tough time with it, and I understand.
Right.
I really understand. And I might not have understood it when I was when I was a kid, but then you have a kid yourself, and you
Right.
understand, you get it, you
Absolutely.
get it, and so I just, he had a tough time, but he's so used to, like, you pick yourself back up. But like, I sat and talked with him, and I was, and my grandmother's been gone I'll be 26 years in December. And, and for people who like to do math, you can pretty much find out how old I am by just
Right.
by doing that math. Just putting that out there. Like, I know how people do, so it's like, yeah. But no, it was just like, talking with him, we still have talks where he'll drift off, and he'll just break. And he's remarried and been remarried for 19 years, but he will still break down about my grandma. He's like, your grandmother was the best woman that I've ever known, and
Right.
and this,
It's the
and
love of his life, I'm sure.
yeah, and so it was, and so it was hard. It's hard for someone, and that's to me, that's it. That was his wife.
Right.
And it to me, I honestly, that's the thing I struggle with in dating too. I don't really understand how dating wise people are so attached. I've never really understood it, but I guess because that's a thing that I've had to work on myself, and it's something I touch on in my music. It's like a detachment thing, where the things that I'm attached to the most are the things that either come from me or I come from. And that's my mom, that's my daughter, or
Right.
like family, like family. So I didn't know. I was like, 26 years later, you're still breaking down and you moved on. Like, I would have felt like, for someone that you dated, like you always have a place for them, in your heart, I guess. But I've never seen an instance where you lost somebody, and then maybe it's because you lost them, like, because you lost them, as opposed to, like, you guys broke up, went your separate ways, and lived your
Right.
lives
Right.
differently. So, and that's why I think it's him. But, and also, not, I don't want to say this, but like, I just don't think his new wife compares to my grandmother. So I think that's, he's not gonna watch this. So he said so himself. He said so himself. Just,
Well,
he said that.
that's totally normal, because that
It's
was
normal, yeah.
the love of his life, the mother of his children. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't, you know, you
it's I
can't be
like I will say that I do get that. The person that you decide to create that child with, I do understand, having a soft spot for them.
right.
Not that I necessarily
Have
share
one.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not saying that I do, or no, I won't say that I don't. Like I said, we're cordial. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're cordial enough to where we can laugh and joke with each other. Where it hadn't been like that in years. So, and but I do get it though, because it's someone you create, especially if you love your child the way that both me and my ex love our daughter. It's hard to not still have a soft spot for that person, because every time you look at that child, you're reminded of the
Right. You
love
see
that you had to
her,
create
she
that child.
sees you. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what do you want to impress upon your daughter more than anything? What's a lesson that you want her to take with her, throughout her life, and to, remember, hey, my dad always told me, or my dad showed me how to live. What is it you want to pass down to her? Um,
You know, it's funny because she's 9, and her being 9, she's so smart, and she just makes me so proud, like all the time. But it's just we have conversations, like serious
like
conversations. Like,
adult
I'll
conversations, yeah.
yeah, like, and she'll ask me about, like confidence and self-esteem and stuff,
Oh,
and she'll
wow.
be like, and she'll be like, Dad, like, they say people shouldn't do this because da da da. And like, I'll sit there and talk with her, and I'll always tell her, like, and it's hard to get through to a child because children are impressionable. So You get around other kids, and other kids can easily make you feel insecure and unsure of yourself and stuff like that. But my thing is, as a child, I did not have that much. Up until like I was 8 or 9, that's when my mom was like, look, you this, you are that. Don't let anybody tell you different, and don't ever forget it. And that's just, she like that. And at that, it was like a switch for me. Like, you're right, ma. I am that. Cool. And you know, as you get older and become an adult, sometimes you lose that because life will chip away at you a little bit, and you start to question yourself a little bit. But you know, to those teenage years, you couldn't tell me shit. Like, you couldn't tell me anything. You couldn't tell me anything. And like, and you know, so looking at my daughter, I try to, you know, tell her some of this. I try to, everything my mom passed down to me, I try to pass down to her. Let her know, like, you are powerful, you're strong, and you know, like, she's my princess, but you're gonna be a queen. You're going to a queen. You know, you are gonna be a wonderful woman. I want you, and like, I can't, you know, I'm a man, so it's hard. I don't know everything about being a woman, and that's the thing. It's, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to like dad it up to the point where, you know, I want her mom to also be able to show her, you know, things her mom does and stuff like that too. So it's like she gets the best of both worlds. And honestly, growing up, I always said, like, I didn't have the best of both worlds. I had a mom who had to teach me how to be a man, and that required me to go out and learn the hard way that you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't dip your, like, don't do that. Like, you know, like, hey, if you go there, you might get shot at. Don't do that. And so, you know, like, I had to do that. And like I said, I put my mom through hell through my teenage years, because you couldn't tell. Like, I would say to her, like, when she would, you know, get mad, I was like, well, you told me, ma. You told me, like. And then she was like, no, yeah, but not that way. Like, not that way. Like, you're doing too much. Yeah, I was like, you gotta differentiate. You know, you gotta break it down differently. But like, you know, like my mom, to me, like, my mom and my ex, I always said they saved my life, and they saved my life because I was spiraling, and my mother was like, you got two choices: you can go or you can stay, but you ain't bringing that shit in my house. And then some stuff happened with my ex that I cannot speak about, but it was very dangerous, very dangerous. And she said, no, never that again. Like, people following me, not dealing with that. I was like, I'll take care of it. And then, you know, so that's what I said. When I got to wrestling, I used to sit and look at some of these people, talk to them, and I'm like, man, you ain't got no idea the shit that I've seen. And y'all complaining about y'all got $150 in an envelope to do your 15-minute match. They would complain. I would hear them complain, like, man, I wish I could. You know, I'm like, man, look, you see what we're in Tremont Music Hall. Like, you know, to me, I was used to seeing people perform, not wrestling, but like, I was used to seeing like concerts in front of 50 people or 75 people. Like, it's 400 people here. Like, that's 400.
The people. I mean, it was 1,500 that first match at Ziggy's.
Yeah, like, it was tons of people. Like, I'm like, y'all are doing good. And like, the money is going to eventually, and that's one thing, that was a business model that I didn't understand. I was like, the ticket's kind of cheap, but I understood why, because you want to draw people in. But I was like, man, these tickets cheap, man. Like, you know, these are cheap, like really cheap. Like, especially, you can't bring, like, you know, Chris Hero, AJ Styles, and all these guys, and then, you know, be like, $10. Like, hell yeah, take $10. Like, who's gonna turn that down? You know, like, especially because wrestling shows then, you know, there weren't a lot of tickets, you know, that were that cheap. Like, if you went to a WWE event in 2013, 2014, I mean, yeah, you know, the like the cheap seats, the nosebleeds are like $25, but if you're sitting in like the middle rows, you're paying 60, 75, sometimes higher than that. And so you get to watch $10 to go watch some wrestling. Even if you're not a big fan, you're like, oh, that's $10. Like, okay, cool.
$10 to go watch this. I don't know who these people are, but shoot. Right. And yeah, I never really understood that either. But I was like, you know, hey, it's, you know, it's not me. So, you know,
go like
self here.
Yeah. So like, when I left wrestling, I was like, man, when I left there, you know, I started to go to like indies in Maryland and like Virginia, and I was around like that, and I was like, man, like, these people are charging $25 general admission to get in, and they were charging $10. Like, what the hell is wrong with us?
Right. And you know, Virginia and Maryland, don't they have that commissioner? You know, that you got.
It's a little different. Yeah.
North Carolina, you could start up a
Yeah.
wrestling promotion with nothing, So
And see, that was the crazy part too. Is like I remember like AML, I think it was right. AML
right,
started, and I remember when it started, and I remember I don't know if it was Tracy Myers.
Tracy Myers.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about it, and at the time, I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and I heard about it, and I was just like, eh, I was like, eh, I was like, that doesn't sound. And then I knew a couple people that would work there, and I would ask them like, how's AML, and they were like, and they were like, eh. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, damn, it just must be like a North Carolina thing, like in
Well,
general. Like
they just did a show in Gastonia a
they
couple
did,
weeks. Yeah, they're moving, you know,
yeah, moving around.
further south, and because normally they run Winston-Salem, the Piedmont Triad,
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
they had Shane Taylor on their
Oh, okay.
and their next card they've got the Varsity Blondes
Oh, okay.
on there. So, both promotions have put on great shows and I've enjoyed both, the last PWX show I went to was when Jushin Thunder Liger was there.
Oh, yeah, I
Uh,
remember. Yeah, I remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that was on the bucket list to get to meet him, and it was fantastic. And you know, it's always good seeing people like Ethan Case and John Schuyler and
Yeah,
Caleb. All those all the people that built PWX. So,
yeah.
but I don't really get out to a lot of wrestling shows anymore. Like I did, one time. I still enjoy, seeing them. And I'm just curious, who are your favorites right now? Who do you really like right now?
So without saying too much, I am biased to AEW right now. I'm very
I
biased
think
to AEW.
everybody is really.
A lot of people are, but I'll say I'm biased because uh your guy, I think he was part of From the Army, George,
Yeah, George.
Hill.
Yeah,
So he is a very big
yes, he is.
supporter. He's a very big
Yep.
supporter of what I do, and I told him something happened. I cannot speak on it right now because it's not
Understand.
official,
I understand.
but he was a very big proponent of something happening, and several companies reaching out to me about possibly working with them, and I
That's
and
awesome.
I told him, I was like, bro, this is you're doing because you're the one making these tweets that they're paying attention to. So I really appreciate him. He doesn't know how much I appreciate him because if you'd have asked me years ago, I'm like, wrestling can go to hell. I'm not like, I want nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with these
Yes,
people.
no, do not collect $200. Just go to
Yeah,
hell.
yeah, go to hell, go to hell. But AEW is what brought my love back for professional wrestling, and it was like WWE is such a hard watch for like years for me. Like, and it's like you
Yeah.
like people like in terms of favorites. Like, I like Sasha Banks, but it's not always really about wrestling with Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks that's just I got a thing for Sasha. I just think she's fine. So it's just and I've always thought that like
I'm the same way with Dolph Ziggler. I get it. I get it.
yeah, it's like I just remember seeing Sasha, and then same thing with Bianca Belair when I first saw her. Like for
Love
me,
Bianca.
I was just like, oh, it's like she's strong. I'm like, I like when you make jokes. I'm like, man, she could whoop my ass. I'm fine with that. Like I'm okay with that because she's so like, and I just have I just admire her as an athlete also. So
Right.
in terms of WWE, all my favorites are literally just the women. Becky Lynch for a while was like I was a fan, and I went to a WWE event. It was SmackDown 1000, I want
Oh
to
wow.
say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so yeah, a friend of mine was working at the time for WWE's PR, and I was not trying to go to any events, and he's like,
Right.
man, look, it's SmackDown 1000, like Edge is gonna show up, and it was like I think Evolution that came back for that, and I was like, you're making it sound like something I could. I was like, okay, and
Do that.
he's like, man, just get to DC. He's like, give me a call when you get here. He's like, I'll get you in, get you a decent seat. He's like, I'm not putting you front row. I was like, I don't want to be front row. I don't like something that no one knows is I hate front row seats and I hate the floor seats at wrestling events because I hate the idea of like they go straight back. And I'm tall, but you know, I don't want to, I just don't like it. So every
Well, I
time I
ended up
get,
booths in my lap at PWX one time. So I understand about sitting in the front
yeah,
row because you're going to end up with a wrestler in your lap.
yeah, now, so yeah, so I went to see, I think Sasha was there, and I got to go backstage actually, briefly, which was like, I was like, PWX ain't do this for me. He did this for me back in the day, which is funny because the friend that I had that works in WWPR has nothing to do with like PWX or anything like that. Like he just
Funny.
happened to get a job working with the
Right.
WWE and the PR. And so I used to have this thing where I used to do this thing on Twitter where I used to spoil a lot of the results because I had a friend that worked there. And so people used to be like, "No, man, like I think when The Rock came back and he had the thing with Rusev,
Oh,
I spoiled it like a day before. I was like, man, y'all gonna be mad when you see what Rock do to Rusev." And then I remember somebody was like, "We talking about The Rock ain't coming back." And so people was like, "Oh, you just talking." And then it happened, and like everybody's like, "Yo, True, how'd you know this?" And I used to do that because I was like, people used to try to deny, like, "Man, you ain't got no pull. You don't know nobody in wrestling." I'm like, okay,
you'll see.
like, all right, okay. And I remember when I was at SmackDown 1000, I think I sent out the funny part is it would have been, I don't like taking pictures with people. That's one thing. Another thing, I don't really care to take pictures of people, which I kind of wish I did back in when I was in PWX because like memories pop up. Like the only memories I have is like the pictures with me and Swan and like me and Steen and like a
Right.
couple other guys. But I kind of wish I did because now
You have
when I went
pictures
to
of Cedric?
I have a video of me and Cedric.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a video of me and Cedric. But yeah, so it's funny, not from PWX. That was at Evolve show. I went.
Oh,
I got.
yeah. I remember
I
that.
came. Yeah, I came to an Evolve show, and we kind of like I was chopping up with him a little bit. And this is like I said, I remember I was there when he got his. I was there though, and I didn't take a picture, but I did a live podcast. We were all at dinner. It was like Cedric, Kenny King, Savannah Evans, Craig Veltri was there at the time. A couple other people. And I did a live podcast. Right? I was passing the phone to Ariel and everybody else. Everybody's passing the phone and talking, just saying shit. And I was like, and I think about it now, I'm like, that'd have been a cool picture of me, just all of us at the table,
Right.
passing the phone around. So I have one video with Cedric, but at SmackDown 1000, my phone, I didn't have a charger. My phone died right as we were going backstage. So I'd have flexed on somebody like I'm backstage, like, and but at the same time, like it was cool. Like I said, I got to meet a couple of the people and stuff like that. And I remember I'm seeing some of the ladies in the. I was with my boy with me. My boy's like, "Hey man, try your luck. We here. Try your shot."
For it, dude. YOLO.
But, yeah, but unfortunately, all the women that I've been interested in were married, and I was like, okay, or dating somebody, and yeah, I was like, I'm good. That's okay. And I don't want to date anybody in wrestling anyway,
No.
except for Ty Conti. If Ty Conti is a single needs somebody,
I
I'll
mean,
date. Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, and her, that's the one. That's the one. But yeah, outside of AEW is hard to pick favorites because I mean, let's be real, everybody in AEW is awesome. But
it's legit. Yep.
personally, personally, I will always be happy for the success of the current number one contender to the AEW championship, Hangman Adam Page.
Mr.
And
Oh, mm, loved seeing him at PWX. Oh, we were so lucky.
I I never forget. I have so many memories. The one thing I'll say about Page, uh, I was gonna call him something else. I don't want to call him something else, but like what I remember about Page is that he was so cool that when I was so another brief thing, I was trying to work with Ring of Honor in 2016, 2017. I spoke about it because Ring of Honor's business is a little janky, and apparently people that work there don't remember me from the other. They work at other companies now, and apparently they don't remember anything of my situation now. They don't remember it, but I have the emails and shit. I
Got the
remember.
receipts.
Yeah, I remember. So I was backstage with ACH, Tadarius Thomas, and I don't think Cedric was there that day. I don't think he was there at that event. Um, and somebody else, and it might have been Mike Bennett. Might have been Mike Bennett, and we're all just kind of standing there talking. And like Paige walks by, and he does a double take. He's like, "Yo," And I was like, yo, what's up? He was like, PWX, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I haven't seen a dude in 2 years. And you remember me enough to, I was like, that meant something to me because I'm like, you remember me, dude. Like, I see Scholar plenty of times. You don't remember me like that. like, I saw Ethan Case a couple months ago at PWX. He was like, dude, you look familiar. And I'm like,
Oh God. Come
I used to
on.
sit I used to sit next to your ass in fucking Chili's and TGI Fridays. Like damn, man. But like that's what I say, it's business, you know. Like you see people, you might remember faces, but you don't, you know, unless you have that deep connection for friendship with them, it's not the same. But like a Paige is always somebody who, like, you know, we used to too sweet each other all the time before he was in the, you know, Bullet Club Elite and all that stuff. And so I like that, like it's just I'm really happy for his success. Every time I see him, the first thing I think is, I'm like, man, you came from country jacked to this, like
with Corey Hollis.
Yeah. And I remember, so I remember like earlier I said I had ideas and people were taking them in turn. So country jack was not my idea, obviously, but my idea was when Luke Gallows came in, I wanted Corey Hollis and Paige to like shit on like the entire wrestling world. Because I thought about it. I was like, man, the only way word of mouth is going to spread about this company is online, because the word of mouth is different. It's not like the tape trading days back when it was like NWA and Coliseum Video and like ECW and all of Japan and Mexico, things like, it's not the same. The internet is the greatest form of promoting your stuff. I knew this back then. Nobody seemed to understand. I said, yo, if somebody just pulls out their phone and gets like a grainy video of Corey just ragging on everybody, like people gonna be like, yo, who the hell are these dudes? Who are these dudes?
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
we can, yeah, like we can get people, instead of coming from just South Carolina and say Virginia, maybe somebody from like, I don't know, like New York wants to drive down, or it's like that, like somebody, like something that grabs their attention. Like we need something. And I think I saw it as, these are homegrown talents, like similar to how AEW does it now, right? You can bring in your CM Punks, your Bryan Danielsons, and even your John Moxley's, even though Moxley's more, to me, he's like, now he's a full grown AEW talent. But it's like you bringing these guys in, but you can work them around your stars.
Absolutely.
And you know, and it was hard because, you know, you got AJ Styles coming in, he's going over on Cedric. Like I don't think that should. I was always said that should have never happened. Like AJ Styles
should have gone over him.
Yeah, and like I said, I remember the process. I know what happened. There was never a chance that Cedric was ever going to get to go over. But that was another thing for me about business that I didn't understand. I thought the promoters make the decisions. That's who wins. You know, I didn't realize that talent had that type of power.
Especially AJ Styles.
Yeah, AJ Styles, like somebody who has that kind of name. Like I'm thinking, man, you're on the Indies. What does it matter? You're the bigger name. If you put somebody over, you just there for one weekend. What does it matter? And so I had this idea of like, yo, Paige and Hollis. Like I'm telling everybody that will listen to me, Patrick to everybody else, to like to Chris Shore. I'm like, listen to me, Corky Frank. I'm like, somebody listen to me. I'm like,
listen to me.
Like because I remember that night in Tremont when they did the big country jack thing. I remember Hollis did cut a promo, but it was just kind of like just there. And I'm like, listen, man, like I'm an artist, I'm a visionary. Like, trust me, I understand. Like, and if anybody knows how to get people talking and get people's attention, trust me, I know what it'll do. like you got me here for this. Let me work. And they were just like, nah, man, we don't want to. Like, I remember being told they didn't want to step on WWE's toes if he said anything about them. And I'm like, WWE does not care about us. They don't care. Like, why do we, like, if you step on their toes, good, because that means they're noticing. And like, you know, that's the difference between being, say, at 15,000 followers and then being a company that can have 60 to 70,000 followers. It's just that simple. And so that's the one thing when I look at Paige, I think about like, man, like they didn't listen back then, because I mean, really, his gimmick is not much different now than what Country Jack was.
Nope.
He just drinks and he just talks shit more. Like that's what they should have always been. Like I think they had this idea of this country group had to be like, we're country boys and we, you know, that's like, nah, man, like I've been around dudes from the country the whole time. They talk shit. Like,
they do. Absolutely.
And so it's like you gotta let people be the most authentic version of themselves. Like I said, maybe I don't know if Paige was ready at that time for that type of, maybe he wasn't ready at the time.
And he was a school teacher too at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time. So
right. Yeah. So, but I just remember like, man, like why every time I see him, I'm excited about
I am
uh
too. Homegrown guy doing so good,
yeah,
and he's such a good guy.
he's the nicest dude ever. Like
Yes.
that's what makes his gimmick so funny to me because I'm watching him with like Dark Order and all this stuff, and I'm like, that's really who the dude is. Like he's just
Absolutely.
really a good dude. He's just really like a naturally like his success could not have happened to a better person. And a lot of times in wrestling, you don't get to say that very often.
No,
So
and he's, I'm glad he's back and into the fold, and
I was
yeah,
wrong by a week. I was mad. So
oh,
I had got I had called a friend of mine. I was like, man, look, I said, if Paige is not coming back anytime soon, tell me because I was going to go to the one in Philly, the one he came back to. I said, hey, I might go to this AEW in Philly. It's like, I might go. I said, but I was like, is Paige gonna be back by then? And they were like, yeah, you should be back for the Brody show. And this is like a couple weeks before the Brody
right,
show happened. And so I heard, and like I said, I'm like I don't bother my connections very often, right? I don't people I know, I don't bother them very often. So I'm like, all right, man, look, I was like, tell me, is he coming back? And then he told me he'd be back by the Brody show, and then my schedule changed and I couldn't go to the Philly show. And then I was gonna go to the Brody show, but I was like, I didn't realize how far Rochester was from Maryland because I think New York, and I think, oh, New York's 2-3
right,
hours. It's not.
yeah, but it's
And I was like, yeah, I was like, that's like 6 hours. Like, I was like, hey man, like, hey
I
Paige, like, I love you, Paige. Nah, man, I'm good. But I did get to see them, see him perform at Fight for the Fallen in Charlotte when they came to
right,
Charlotte. I
right,
came to Charlotte for that. I had a couple other things like business things to take care of, so I came to Charlotte for that, and I was like, just so happens to be the same week that PWX is having an event and AEW is having an event. I was like, let me just go to both, and yeah. So the Page is he's before Punk and Danielson got there, and Adam Cole, because I can't those three. I love those three. I've always loved those three. Like Punk is probably on my Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling. A lot
mine
of people
too.
don't,
Mine,
a lot of people don't give him the credit I think he deserves because he,
uh,
to
I,
me, is
he's
there as much as there is no AEW without, of course, Young Bucks, Cody, and Page and Omega and guys like that. And Punk to me is the catalyst. He is the catalyst that
yes.
kind of struck the,
He,
he's the
he brought people that wouldn't have watched it otherwise to AEW.
and even that's the concept of having something different, right? It's like, what if
Right.
AEW would have existed in 2011 when he cut the pipe bomb promo and his contract was coming up? What if he
Oh wow.
decided, hey, I wanted to leave? That would have been entirely different. And so
Absolutely.
him leaving in 2014, I've always said it changed professional wrestling because that's when I kind of was like, like I didn't care about watching, because Punk was why I started watching, and it was tough. Like there's so many fans who loved what he did and felt like his voice of the voiceless thing was like perfect, the best in the world. Like his shirts were selling out everywhere. It's like they had something, and I don't think WWE appreciated
Or
what
knew what to do with it
knew what
either.
to do with him. And to be fair, Brian Danielson, kind of the same thing.
Yep.
It's just that eventually, like it was like, when Punk, I think when Punk left, I think that opened the door for them to like, okay, fine, people are not gonna allow us to do this Batista versus Randy Orton shit. So we gotta kind of do something with Brian, and I think that's great that happened that way. Hold on, I'm sorry about that. I had a phone call come in. I'm on my
You're fine.
phone. And yeah, like I said, I don't see the time. I do have like a little
Yeah,
little
you got
shindig, little
it.
rendezvous. Yeah, yeah, but she can wait. She's fine. She's okay. Like she's used to this. She's used to this. She's okay. But no. So yeah. Like I think with Danielson and Punk, and like when Punk left, and like it's like a shift. Like it's a shift because
Absolutely. A seismic shift.
yeah,
It,
yeah, it's a very like it's so different because Punk was like this, like he was an enigma in his own right because there was nothing that could have ever, like, I remember when the first time I saw Punk was in Ring of Honor, and I remember I think he had a feud with Raven. He was feuding with Raven at the time,
Right.
and I didn't know much about Ring of Honor. Like, I only read like the wrestling magazines and stuff, and so I'd be like, oh, like, see Punk. I'm like, that's an interesting name. Like, that was an interesting name.
Right.
Like what does it
Big
mean?
Magnetic Punk.
Yeah. And I didn't know it. I didn't know at the time that's what it meant, but I was
Right.
like, CM Punk. And I was like, he's from Chicago. I was like, okay, cool. And I saw him in Raven and their feud, and I was like, and me and my boys kind of grew up as like a fan of Raven and the Flock,
Right.
you know.
ECW. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like once, to me, the Punk and Raven feud had a lot of Raven and Sandman ECW elements to it, so that
I'd
made
agree
me
with
like, I was like, yo, I mean, obviously minus like the children involved and the wife and all
that.
stuff like minus that, like, which was, yeah, like that was a little too much
Yeah.
ECW. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't know what Heyman and Todd Gordon, all them, I don't know what they were thinking for that. That was a little too much, but it's to me as a kid, because I was watching it as a kid, so I was like, oh
Right.
man, you know,
A
like,
kid
but
involved in this. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, but no. So I genuinely I love what Punk was doing in Ring of Honor, and so when he got to OVW, I didn't know how to watch OVW, but I would like read up on little things, and
Right.
I was starting to learn how to like navigate the internet sites a little bit. So I would read, and I'm like, man, this dude has got something. So when he got to WWE, I was like, yo, like this dude, like, I'm like, he gotta be the next guy. And then I saw what they were doing with him, and I was like, all right, okay. And so I stopped watching from 2008 to like 2009, 2007, 2009. I would go to the live events that WWE had locally, but I would not watch it on television. And because I was like, until they give Punk what he deserved,
Right.
like, I want to watch it. And then I started to like get a few glimpses of a show here and there. And I started to kind of like MVP and some of those other guys back then. And I was like, okay. And then Jeff Hardy was like back, and he was like, singles wrestling. And I was like,
Right.
oh, Jeff Hardy's champion. Oh, okay, cool. Like, all right, I guess I'll give it a shot. And then CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy is what got me back into
That's
kind
some
of
good
paying
stuff.
attention. Yeah. And so that's why I would say with Punk, I like Punk is my guy. Like, that's my guy. Like, to the point where, like, Stone Cold, Rock, Shawn Michaels, CM Punk. Like, those are my favorites that and Bret Hart's right there too. And I mean, like Flair, yeah, it's hard for me to give Flair too much credit. Man, I just don't. And Hulk Hogan, definitely not. But Macho Man, Randy Savage. So like, those are the people that I like. So it's hard for me now to look at wrestling and see anybody that has that it factor. Like,
Right.
it's hard. Like, but I feel like in AEW, like MJF, I think he's such a nice guy in reality, because I know
Right.
people that he's friends with. So like,
Right.
everybody's like, man, he's a good dude, man. I'm like, and that's what makes it. I love that.
He's
Yeah,
what the business needs. There needs to be this heel that you just cannot stand. You don't want to cheer for him. It's just he makes you so mad that
right.
that's the guy. That's the guy you love to hate.
And he's a young dude. Like, he's still
He's young.
fairly young. And so
Yeah.
for him to have such a grasp on it at that age, it's like,
Yeah. Can you
you're a
imagine?
natural.
Yeah.
You're
What is?
natural. You got it.
Yeah.
And so I'd say Paige, MJF. I like Darby too. Darby's like,
I like Darby. Yeah.
yeah,
He's
Darby's good.
together.
Yeah, like I think I think he is that the outcast of
Right.
like, and I think that's what, like, I'm like, man, like I said, there was Punk was like that prior. You had I mean, even there's some elements of Raven to me in some of what he does too,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
I like that, I like that type of stuff. Like, like the darker shit gets, I kind of always liked it in wrestling, because it's like, the big bright star, you need that. You need the big buff star, you need that guy, you need this guy, but you also need that guy that can appeal to the demographic that sometimes feels like they're not included in
Absolutely.
everything. You need that. And so I felt like, man, like, Darby is that guy, because I personally couldn't relate to him and what he does and the skateboarding thing
Right. Me
and
either. I totally get how people can.
yeah.
And
And so
everybody
yeah,
there needs to be representation in everything. You like and that's why I think wrestling is great, is because really and truthfully there's room enough for everybody.
yep,
Whether whether they're given the room is a different story, but there's
Yeah.
enough in wrestling
Yeah.
for everything. It's just like really quick $5 wrestling. I love $5 wrestling because
Yeah.
it's that proves that there's something for everybody and there's a place for everybody in wrestling.
I used to hate $5.
Oh,
So
come on.
because I used to see it and I'd be like, come on, man. Like, really? But I found it was funny though. I did think it was funny.
Right.
It was funny. And so I was like, but then you realize like, man, everything don't have to be serious all the time. Everything doesn't have to be,
Absolutely.
great. And so
Right.
I totally get it. I totally understand. And that's why I think right now wrestling is like there's something for everybody. I feel
Right.
like as a wrestling fan, I'm not a big fan of what WWE does, but it's more so the production, the
Right.
style, the camera cuts,
Yeah, the
just
camera cuts are brutal sometimes.
yeah, and also just like the promos. Like I feel like wrestling is at its best when you allow the talent to just be the talent,
Yeah.
and it's hard. It's hard when you give somebody a script and say, "Hey, remember
Yes.
this."
Yeah.
Yeah, remember this, or here's what you're supposed to say. If you go off the script, it's okay, but here's what you say. And it's like for me, it's like that's not fun. As a fan,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not fun because you can tell when somebody's reading. Like,
Yeah.
you can tell. And like, for all of the years that I watch, I'm like, man, these promos just don't. It's just
Mm-mm.
not. They're just not hitting like that. And even, I used to say with Punk too. Like when I used to watch Punk in WWE, I'm like it just feels like he's still being controlled with what he can
Uh,
say somewhat anyway. Like you could tell he's still saying what he means mostly, but it's like he can't. I mean, on TNT they let you say shit like
right.
like like damn, like I didn't know you could do that on cable.
I know
Like
they
I didn't know.
changed everywhere, and I'm like, when did this become a thing?
And but that's why I was like, you know what? People say AEW has elements of WCW in it, and I get it. I get it. Tony Schiavone and
Right.
TNT and all that stuff. I like, but the atmosphere reminds me more of ECW and the
Right.
crowd, and then the ability. So I feel like they take everything that was once good about wrestling.
Right. And they've put it together, and
That's it.
it's great when someone actually gets it. I think Tony Khan gets it, and he's got people with him who also get it.
Because they're fans of the
Right.
actual, and that makes the difference. Like, let's be real. I don't think Vince McMahon is that much of a fan of professional wrestling because as he's gotten older, I think it's more like, well, what can we do to make more money, pal? And like what but that's and I get it though, because it's a public company. So you
He's
have different
stockholders too. Yeah.
you're serving way too many masters on that type of but wrestling, because wrestling is not that. Wrestling is never that. Wrestling
No,
should have
it's never
never
has
been.
been. No.
And if you're a billionaire, it doesn't have to be that. You don't have to give away the power of what you put in your programming to tons of people who have no idea what's going on the show anyway. People just see it's profitable, it's successful. I want to, okay, I'm gonna buy stock in this. I want to invest in this. Disney gives you a deal, and it's like it's Disney. There's nothing to be next to pro
No.
wrestling.
No.
Like,
It's
and I think,
not at all.
and I, and I think people talk a lot about gatekeeping and all these different words they throw around. It's like you need to gatekeep certain things because professional wrestling, at its core, is literally violence. Choreographed violence is what it
Right.
is.
Absolutely. And it's a story, but you got to have that mix up in order for it to work. You got to
Yeah.
have you know,
And it's like watching death matches and these Hell in the Cells and these cage matches and all this blood and stuff like that. It's like that's not Disney friendly. That's not TV PG friendly.
not at all.
And it's like and even back in the WWF days when Hulk Hogan was and King Kong Bundy and all these guys were like there, they were still blading and
They
bleeding
sure
out.
were.
And like I've seen so many matches with Hogan bleeding. I'm like, that wasn't even necessary. It wasn't even
Right.
necessary to see the match. And he just but it makes sense because people get attached to it. And
Right.
and so I went to the first dance in Chicago and when Punk came back, because I mean Punk's my guy. So, you
Right.
know, and I'd been to Chicago one time and I was like, I even said to like, man, Chicago's nice, but I'll never come back unless CM Punk comes back to wrestling. When he comes back to wrestling and he goes to Chicago, I'm coming.
You
And
got to
I
go.
was there. I was there in Charlotte at the Fight for the Fallen when they announced. And it's funny, I was there. I was on the floor I was standing on the floor with a couple guys, and we're talking, and I was like, man, you think Punk's coming back? I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I've been asking around. I was like, I hung out.
Nobody
Like,
kept thing.
like I'll even tell you. I even tell you. So, like, I hung out with Savannah Evans like the day before AEW. I was like, you wrestled on Dark before. What you know? Tell me something. Like, I know you know. So, you gotta tell me something. Like, I'm like, man, tell me something, man. I was at the PWX show. I'm like, hey, man, y'all know something? Like, tell me y'all know something about Punk coming back. Everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, what? I'm like, I need to know. Like, we don't know anything. And I'm calling some people I know that I know people in AEW. So I'm like, hey, man, look, tell me. And like, and one person told me, like, if I tell you what I know, like,
You
it's
can't
gonna
tell
get
them.
out. Like it's gonna get out. He said, I know you. You're not gonna keep it to yourself. It's Punk. It's different. Like, if it was anybody else, I'd tell you. Like, I
Right.
can't tell you. And I said, you basically just told me
Right.
already by not telling me. And so I got off the phone and I was like, when them tickets going on sale? And then the next day I ended up going to the Fight for the Fallen and they announced the first dance. And I was like, yo, this is happening. Like, this is really happening. And I've been to tons and tons of wrestling events. There was nothing like being in the arena for the first dance. That was like, we sat through 2 hours of Dark tapings, and like I'm next to these dudes, and like dudes are like, man, like, what if he don't show up, man? And like everybody's like, I'm like, I'm like, he's showing up. I already know this. Man. Like,
Show up. I'll go get him.
well, see, by the time it happened, I knew I knew it. Like, I already knew. Like, I already was told, and they were like, you already got your tickets. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, all right. He's like, well, I can tell you got tickets. He's like, yeah. I was like, he's coming. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. Yeah, I'm great. I went and I got I got food and shit, and I'm eating before the show, and I'm like, yeah,
Right.
man,
Yes.
this is the night. And like, person I was sitting next to, he like, man, he's like, man, you sure he coming? I'm like, I've never been wrong. Anytime somebody tells me something about it, I'm almost never wrong. And so that moment where the show starts, everybody's like, man, they're gonna bring him out the end of the show. I'm like, no, he's gonna come out at the beginning of the show. And they're like, how do you know that? I'm like, he's coming out at the beginning. Trust me. And when that music hit, I've never seen people, and I feel like even the television didn't do it justice because the building was rocking,
Right. I'm sure it
literally.
was.
And I hadn't experienced that. The only time I ever experienced a moment like that was 1998, and I was at a WWF Raw. And it's pretty obvious where I'm going with this. Stone Cold Steve Austin came out,
Right.
and I had never, and like as a kid, I was like, oh my god, this is the greatest shit. Like, because everybody was losing their mind, and Chicago is the closest thing that I've had to that, because I've never felt a building shake from the crowd, and I was just like, this is amazing. Like, it's a moment. And unfortunately, the last couple years I've been through, it makes you stop and appreciate those moments. Like,
Right.
I'm witnessing something that means a lot to a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't think about it like that when you're in it,
Right.
because but now I do, because it's like, yo, like, this is 7 years in the making. This is CM Punk returning to a company that was
To
created.
wrestle.
Like returning to a company that gets professional wrestling.
Right.
Because at his core, he is not a sports
No,
entertainer. He's a
wrestler.
professional wrestler. Nobody, like all those guys that go through all these indies and all that stuff, when they started out, sure, you want to make it to WWE because that's the dance, that's the big place.
Right.
It's the only place that existed the last 20 years, of 20,
Absolutely.
15, 20 years. But it's like, you went there because you love professional wrestling. Like,
You
nobody
didn't.
said,
I'm a sports entertainer. Yeah. Nobody says.
like, nobody, like, if I talk to somebody on the street and they're like, hey man, like, you like basketball, you like sports, and you like wrestling, right? I like professional wrestling, because you always had to make the distinction, right? Because you say wrestling, some people think amateur or
Sure.
professional. I like professional wrestling, and it's never been, I love sports entertainment. I've never said that. So, like, and I realize now that there are a lot of fans though who have kind of bought into this sports entertainment, and it's like, you don't come from those trenches, man. Those, like, you don't come from that era of watching the guys that's like wrestlers, even if they weren't the best in-ring guys. Yeah, like, wrestlers, like, they're still wrestlers. Like, you know, I never looked at Macho Man Randy Savage as anything but a professional wrestler.
Absolutely.
And he was super entertaining. Still, professional wrestler.
Wrestler.
Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, professional wrestlers. Like, the first thing I noticed about them was that they were wrestlers. Like, I didn't care about their gimmicks or their character or like who they were managed by or any of that. So that's why I was like, professional wrestling, it's a love for me. I love three things very heavily, and it's always been music, basketball, and professional wrestling. And it's personal for me to where like I love this business through and through, which is why it is very promising to me that I'm getting, you know, talking to professional wrestling companies again and people that work there and kind of like, hey man, you know, maybe
Right.
there's a spot for you. Maybe, you know, and it's just like, don't tease me. You know, don't tease me with, you
Don't
know,
tease
don't
me like that. Come on now.
yeah, like don't make me feel like it's a chance, you know. But no, so it's like I said, AEW has made me to the point. I didn't have cable for a while because I didn't need cable, right? I didn't need cable. You know, my daughter spends most of her time watching kid stuff on Netflix or on YouTube, searching like
Right.
cat videos and video game stuff. Yeah, you know, she on Nintendo Switch and stuff. Like that's what she likes to do. But I went and got like YouTube TV so I could watch AEW weekly, and that to me, for someone who did not care about watching wrestling weekly in
That's a
years,
big thing.
it's a big thing. It's a big, and I love what they do, and I talk about AEW a lot, and people are like, oh man, like you act like you work for them. And I'm like, well, that's the hope, that's the
Right.
hope, but like
Why not? Why
that's the
not?
hope, but it's just like I've not enjoyed professional wrestling like this in so long.
For a very long
It's a
time. Yeah.
it's a good feeling. It's like if you know if your favorite artist hadn't dropped an album in a long time and they come
Right.
out with something and
Yeah.
you're like, man, like I'm glad they're back. I'm playing this record 30, 40 times over. You're gonna talk about it. They're like, did you hear this song? I love like that's the fun part of our interests, our hobbies, is that it's something we can be excited about because this world is a very tough world to live in.
And I think as we get older, we get jaded and we forget about how wonderful it is, you know. And I know you have got a date, and I don't want to keep you from said
Yeah,
date.
yeah,
I know 4 o'clock, but it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I would love to continue this at some point again because there's more
sure.
stuff I'd like to talk to you about. But I wish you the best with this new album. I know it's going to be absolutely wonderful. And again, tell people where they can get it.
Every single streaming and music service from Spotify to Tidal, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon, iHeartRadio has it everywhere,
Everywhere.
everywhere, everywhere. November 3rd, November 3rd, I'm closing this chapter that is considered a decade of true, which essentially is the ending of my solo music journey. But like I said, I still have other little projects coming out with like my group and my
Right.
circle and stuff like that. But this is the end of my solo albums have been the crux of my career. So it's been the basis of all the success that I've had, which if I could briefly just tell the story that I had a song that's called Money Mitch that I put on the album earlier this year called Life is a Movie, and that's pretty much what's kind of pushing this new wave of people coming to me and saying they want to work with me is because that song by itself has done like over like 600,000 streams.
Oh,
So
wow.
that song being as big as it's gotten has people coming to me like, man, you're dope, man. Like, I love this song. Like, you know, I was kind of used to being like in that 30, 40, 50,000. I was
Right.
okay with that, you know, like the money's decent. It's not great, but it's like,
Right.
okay, whatever. You know, I got other stuff I do. So it's like, fine. But now that I have an album called Life is a Movie that I put out in April, and that is at about 1.1 million streams through all the
Wow.
services. So that is kind of what's made me feel like I can walk away from solo albums because I did what I set out to accomplish, and you know I'm ready to kind of just enjoy life and get back to doing what my mom told me to do, get back to
What
doing
you
what I
love.
love. So
What you
yeah,
Well, I again have just enjoyed talking with you. It's been a minute,
always
and again, you know, maybe we can do this again and put out another
sure
interview. I'm always up for it. Just give me a holler and
for sure.
have fun on your date.
I will try my best.
I will talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.